Hi, I'm Greg Levine. I'm managing editor at Firedog Lake, and this is the party line for February 18th, 2011. Right up top, let's take notice of what's happening in Wisconsin, where it shows you what organized labor can do when they get organized. And they're doing it not only because they stand to lose the right to collective bargaining, but because they perceive there's something much bigger happening here, which is that while Wisconsin is happening now, Ohio will be happening tomorrow, and similar legislation is teed up in states like Arizona, New Jersey, New Hampshire, Indiana, Florida, New Mexico, Iowa, where labor unions understand, as the groups working against them understand, that if they can break state worker unions, they destroy one of the best organizing tools that the Democratic Party has, and one of the best get-out-the-vote tools that the Democratic Party has. So when you see the unions taking a stand in Wisconsin, understand as they understand that this is an important fight to have now, because for the other side, it is just the first step. Now, bargaining is also an issue in Washington, D.C., apparently some very grand bargaining. I'm talking about this negotiation going on between the administration and a few choice senators behind closed doors, where they're going to manufacture some sort of solution for the manufactured debt crisis. Much attention has been paid, of course, to cuts proposed by the White House in programs like LIHEAP, which provides heating assistance to the poor, or cutting back on Pell Grants only a year after they championed expanding them. And those deserve attention, it's true. But what I want to talk about are the cuts that are going to be proposed by someone, can't tell you who first, but by everybody in that room quietly, cuts being proposed to Social Security. Yeah, I said it. The administration, the White House, not just Democrats in Congress, not just Republicans in Congress, not just some big evil conservatives, not Tea Partiers. The White House is also looking at ways to cut Social Security. Nobody wants to say it first. It's very clear the administration's idea is that everyone will jump into the boat at the same time, just as it's very clear that Republicans understand that while they might say that behind closed doors, they're going to let the administration take the first step, because they understand that it's politically toxic to come out and say, we're here to cut Social Security. I mean, even Harry Reid seems to understand that it's politically toxic, but somehow inside the administration they believe that if everybody can blink at the same time, it won't have any kind of political fallout, at least not for the president in the 2012 election. And it's just stunning to me, but you can see that that's where they're going, not only in the rumors reported in the New York Times and the Washington Post, or by the most veteran of Washington veteran journalists, Elizabeth Drew, but you can actually see it in the things that the president said in his press conference on Tuesday. Now, people are very excited because he said, let me see if I can get this right. He said, Social Security is not a huge contributor to the deficit. Now, a lot of people think that's a good statement. I don't. I'll get to that in a second. But first I want to point out what he said right after that, which is, I'm confident we can get this Social Security thing, wait, let me get it right. I'm confident we can get Social Security done in the same way that Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill got it done. Now that reminds me of a joke. It's a very old joke. You see, Moses and Jesus are going golfing, and they get to this 3-par with this really big water hazard right in the middle of the fairway, and Moses up first pulls a 5-iron out and takes a good whack at the ball, and it lands right smack in the middle of that water hazard. Well, Moses goes, does what Moses is good at, parts that water hazard, fetches his ball, places it back where he started, pulls out a 4-iron and manages to clear the hazard and put the ball on the green. Next, it's Jesus' turn. And he takes a look at ball relatively in the same place as Moses's was. He goes to his bag and he pulls out a 5-iron. Moses says, Jesus, I used the 5-iron. You saw what happened. It landed right in the water. The 4-iron's a much better club for this. Why don't you use the 4? And Jesus looks at Moses and says, you know, yeah, you did. You used a 4, but Arnold Palmer, well, and now you can see how old this joke is. Arnold Palmer used a 5-iron, so I'm going to use a 5-iron. So Jesus pulls out the 5-iron, and he takes a whack at the ball, and lo and behold, it lands right in the water hazard. So Moses goes, parts the water hazard, fetches Jesus' ball, puts it back where he started. Jesus, again, with the 5-iron, is about to take a hack at it. And Moses is like, what are you doing? And Jesus says, Arnold Palmer used a 5-iron on this shot. I'm going to use a 5-iron. And lo and behold, again, Jesus puts the ball right into the water hazard. Well, this happens a couple more times, and finally Moses says, you know what, you continue to use the 5-iron, and I'm not going to go in and get the ball for you. And Jesus says, I understand, but Arnold Palmer used the 5-iron on this. I'm going to use the 5-iron. So he takes another swing, does Jesus, and sure enough puts the ball once again into the water hazard, and Moses says, I ain't going in for it this time. Jesus says, fine. He walks over to the water hazard and actually starts to walk out on the water. At this moment, the people who are playing behind Jesus and Moses come up to Moses and say, my God, who does this guy think he is? Jesus Christ? And Moses looks at them and says, no, Arnold Palmer. You see, the joke here is that Barack Obama doesn't think he's Arnold Palmer, but I'm getting the feeling he does think he's Ronald Reagan. See, in that story, Tip O'Neill's in Congress. When they got it done, the president was Ronald Reagan, and Barack Obama thinks he's in that role. Somebody who's going to be able to pull off some sort of grand bargain, as it's called, and go down in history as a guy who transformed government. Not go down in history for what he actually did to government, but go down, as we've noticed with the recent 100th birthday celebrations, as one of our nation's greatest whatever presidents. That's where Obama's looking. He's looking at 2 terms, he's looking at winning re-election, he's looking at the deal as the end in itself, he's looking at being remembered to history as one of the great get-her-done presidents. He's not Ronald Reagan. He's not Jesus Christ either. But we thought he was a Democrat. And Democrats don't cut Social Security. Why? Well, how about first and foremost, because it's not actually part of the problem. You see, Social Security is not a huge contributor to the deficit, as Barack Obama said. In fact, it's not a contributor to the deficit at all. So when Obama says it's not a huge contributor, he's not backing you, progressive left. He's fronting you. He's reaffirming the Republican frame. And you should understand that. And organized labor should understand that. Because if anybody needs the benefits of Social Security, it would be people like teachers and social workers and service workers and government employees who frankly don't make enough to sock away big, big bank accounts for their golden years. So if they can fill the halls of Madison State House, Wisconsin State House in Madison, then I think they should also be filling the halls of Washington, D.C.'s Capitol, our nation's house, and standing outside the White House and making a whole lot of organized noise, because this is really happening. And that's the party line. Now, as usual, we have 2 book salons this weekend, and as usual, they're both great ones. On Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern, we've got At the Dark End of the Street. It's a book by Danielle McGuire about black women, rape, resistance, and a new history of the civil rights movement. And on Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern, Eric Alterman brings his book, Kabuki Democracy, The System versus Barack Obama, and the chat will be hosted then by Will Bunch. Really excellent topics, well worth your attendance. I hope to see you there, and I will see you next Friday for the Party Line.